Thanks, Adam, and can I thank everybody for coming along and taking time out to spend the day here. It's a real thrill for me to be here to address the 6th Annual Boom Time Summit. And I want to thank Chris Brown for all the work that he does and for this dialogue and the progress that's made in putting Western Sydney on the map. I'm going to say it's great to be here in Western Sydney, the first time this summit has been held in the West. It's come home. Once the West had to go to the city to have this conversation. Now the city comes to the West. This reflects, in my view, not just the growth of the summit, but the evolution of Sydney over the past decade. Now, as you know, Western Sydney is a pretty big area. My seat in Parliament is the seat of Epping, and now part of that electorate is now part of the city of Parramatta. So I'm here today proudly as a Premier from the Central River City. Now, one of my political heroes was also from Parramatta. His name was Sir James Martin, and he's the man that Martin Place is named after in the Harbour City. But you can also find a statue of young James in Parramatta Square. Sir James Martin grew up on the grounds in Parramatta of Government House because his dad was a horse groom there, and he channeled his ambition into making Sydney a better place for future generations. He became the Attorney General, the Chief Justice and Premier, the only person to hold those three roles. He was a mentor to Sir Henry Parkes, the father of our Federation. Now, when James Martin was young, Western Sydney was the seat of government. But in his lifetime, and for the 150 years since, our Parliament and our state's centre of gravity shifted dramatically to the east. Today, the centre of gravity is shifting again, and it's coming back home to the west. Western Sydney is rising, and this is not just an aberration. This is simply a return to the natural order of things. Last week, I laid out my vision for Sydney. I talked about how our 3 cities strategy would expand into a 6 cities vision. And it is important to note that 2 of those 6 cities are here in Western Sydney. This is our nation's most dynamic region. And as Premier, I believe that Western Sydney is the opportunity headquarters of Australia. My vision for Sydney is a livable, workable, beautiful city. Today, I want to talk to you about how we can bring that vision to life in the West. How we can make the next step in Western Sydney's evolution, shifting the focus from big infrastructure to great jobs, quality of life and culture, and making every single part of Western Sydney a great place to live. In short, it's all about how we can deliver the best for the West. But first, I want to remind you about how our government's infrastructure investment has transformed the West over the last 10 years. If you wanted to sum up our time in office, you could do it in 4 words: schools, hospitals, roads and rail. Maybe you could throw in more jobs and better services too. But it has been a decade of delivery. The list of major projects that we have built and continue to deliver in Western Sydney is unprecedented in our history. These, importantly, are state-building projects: WestConnex, Northwest Metro, Sydney Metro West, Metro Southwest, Southwest Rail Link, Parramatta Light Rail, M5 widening, M4 widening, M4 tunnels, Windsor Bridge. We're upgrading Malgoa Road, Horsley Drive, the M7, Spring Farm Parkway, Mamre Road, Henry Lawson Drive, Hawkesbury River Crossing, Wentworth Avenue Bridge. You get the picture. These are big projects, and we are getting them all done. And I haven't even started on the schools and the hospitals. This year we opened new or upgraded schools in Camden, Riverstone and 3 in Macquarie Fields. There are 15 more in Western Sydney that we are delivered or are in the pipeline. Our hospital projects are not just great in number, they are groundbreaking in their scale. At Westmead, Bankstown, Lidcombe, Liverpool, Campbelltown, Nepean, Rouse Hill, Blacktown and Mount Druitt. And let's not forget the new airport and the research and industrial precinct being built around it. Last week, I called this the infrastructure spine of our state. You have to have the big infrastructure if you want a region to grow well. But the buildings and the facilities are just the foundations. And as more and more Western Sydney projects move closer to completion, we are turning the page to the next part of the story. It's securing the best quality of life for families in Western Sydney. After all, that's why we build. For the people of Western Sydney, our city's biggest asset. The young families, the tradies, small businesses and startups, the new young professionals and entrepreneurs, people from every corner and every culture around the world, communities with deep roots and green shoots, who make our state richer for calling this place their home. People flock to Western Sydney to achieve the great Australian dream. And we want to support their ambitions and their aspirations to get ahead. They have no time for nonsense, just hard work and the belief that if we all knuckle down, we can build something great and leave something better for our children. And that's why I believe the heart and the future of the modern Liberal Party is here in Sydney's West. And that's why I want Western Sydney to have the best quality of life anywhere in the world. Now, if you want high quality of life, you need access to quality work. Western Sydney is emerging as one of the most diverse and dynamic economic centres anywhere in the world. In the West, we have a thriving hub for professional services, and more businesses and industries are looking west to move their headquarters and host big conferences. Western Sydney is also a stalwart of long-standing productive industries like manufacturing, from buses to pharmaceuticals, food and beverage to steel fabrication. But it will also be the epicentre of the next industrial revolution in Australia. Western Sydney is already the Australian headquarters of advanced manufacturing. With the Bradford Aerotropolis, we are turbocharging a range of new industries that will power our nation's future. Aerospace, defence, agribusiness, healthcare and R&D. In Westmead, $3 billion is being invested by government, universities and the private sector to deliver the Westmead Health and Innovation District. This will be one of the largest health, education, research and training precincts in Australia. These industries and precincts will power the jobs of the future for people in Sydney's West. And that's why we're also working to make sure people at every stage of their career can get the skills and the knowledge they need to be part of Western Sydney's economic boom. You don't have to go too far back to a time when an institution like Western Sydney University was viewed as second tier. Well, it's not second tier anymore. WSU is on the map with a global reputation. And I remember when they changed the name from the University of Western Sydney to Western Sydney University, some people lost their minds. But the uni has proudly put their Western credentials up front. And now that university is one of the great ambassadors for Sydney's West. Universities are a vital partner in our Aerotropolis vision, working side by side with industry to turn research into jobs. They are also an integral part of our plan to roll out a revolution in skills and tertiary education through our new institutes of applied technology. Now, the IAT concept came out of our government's Gonski-Shergold review, and they will reshape the way that people access skills and tertiary education in New South Wales. They seamlessly integrate vocational training, higher education and industry. And the goal is to bring all these sectors together to co-design and co-deliver training programs that offer skills matched to our local industries. We must create the jobs, but we must also empower local workers to make the most of them. The first IAT will be just across the Parramatta River from here, over in Meadowbank, and it will be an Institute for Digital Technology. And today I can announce the first industry partner for the Meadowbank IAT will be Microsoft. This means that we will have a true global technology leader helping design the skills, training and education for students here in Sydney. Microsoft will partner with Macquarie University and the University of Technology Sydney, as well as TAFE New South Wales. Students will be able to acquire credentials at all levels of tertiary education, depending on their needs, whether it's a certificate, a diploma, or credit for a bachelor's degree. With the IAT model, we can have the best of all worlds to deliver the best skills and education for our young people. And when they have the skills, they can move straight into a great job, also right here in the West. Now, the pandemic has been a challenging time for probably everyone in this room and everybody right across our state. But some of the biggest challenges have been faced by people in Sydney's West. Lockdowns made it clear, particularly clear to me, that we need to do more to improve livability in our communities. So a few months ago, I individually met with mayors right across the region. When I asked them what our focus should be, time after time, the same response came back. All about improving quality of life in Western Sydney by building better local facilities. More green space, more local pools, better high streets, parks and places where people can get together. This is the stuff that communities are made of. Now, for a long time, our government's focus has been on the big projects, and they are absolutely essential. 3 years ago, we launched, though, the $190 million livability program as part of the Western City deal. It's delivered facilities like the Fairfield Showground upgrade, the Not Oval synthetic playing field in Camden. But clearly, there is more to be done. And that's why we announced the $5 billion West Invest program just a few months ago. But as I said last week, West Invest is more than just a fund. It's a shift of mindset for my ministers. Western Sydney is not just a place to build metros and motorways. It is a place where people are building communities, and they deserve the very best facilities that support the very best quality of life. Now, one of the hallmarks of a city's maturity is its prominence of its cultural institutions. And that is why the Parramatta Powerhouse Museum is so important. For many decades, there's been a sense that any cultural institution in the West could only be the poorer cousin of its counterpart in the East. The Powerhouse project blows that outdated thinking out of the water. It sends a clear message to Australia and to the rest of the world that Western Sydney is a cultural capital in its own right. The Powerhouse is a landmark project in every sense of the word, and it should just be the beginning, the foundation stone on which we build Western Sydney's cultural credentials. In Australia, sport is an integral part of our culture too, and great venues can electrify a locality. In my view, the Western Sydney Stadium in Parramatta is up there with the best in the world. The viewing experience is outstanding, and when you see the fans streaming through the streets of Parramatta before and after the game, you get a real buzz that it brings to the city. I believe that Sydney's three cities, the East, Central and the West, all deserve world-class stadiums. So far, the Eastern Harbour City and the Central River City are well catered for. So today I can announce a world-class $300 million stadium for the Western Parkland City in Penrith. This will be a total redevelopment on the existing site. The field will be reoriented, there will be brand new stands, and the experience there will be on a whole new level. At the moment, Penrith Stadium hosts matches for a total of less than 2 weeks a year. The new Penrith Stadium will be a sports and entertainment precinct electrifying the West all year round. It will support local jobs, drive more local activity, more foot traffic, and more opportunity for local businesses. Now, as a Tigers fan, I hope Penrith's reign as Premier will be short-lived, but as Premier, I can tell you that this stadium will be a premier venue for Penrith and for Western Sydney for decades to come. Now, last week, I was in Parramatta, at Parramatta Square, topping out the tallest tower in the West. It is emblematic of the transformation that has taken place in Parramatta over 10 years. Now, that transformation is no happy accident. It takes vision and it takes execution. And it takes the commitment of a government willing to back a plan with action. Before that tower took shape, we committed to move offices of some of our biggest departments to Parramatta, to anchor big office projects like that one, and give investors and builders the confidence to proceed. Parramatta Square is now the largest public sector office workplace hub in Australia, accommodating 9,500 workers. Building the towers has created 4,000 construction jobs, and they form part of one of the largest commercial business precincts in the nation. Like so much of what we are building across Western Sydney, these projects don't just pop up with a click of a button. It's a hard slog for the community. Walking around Parramatta last week, it still feels like a construction site. And I know the sheer amount of work going on for many people can be life-challenging for many people. At a summit like this, we focus on the vision and the big picture. But I know that in between the first sod and that finished product, there is a lot of dust, sweat, and sometimes tears. But what I also know is that it's worth it. A few weeks before that, I was again in Parramatta when they took down the barriers for construction of the light rail on East Street. Building that project caused a huge amount of inconvenience. But the result of those efforts is an explosion of opportunity. The business owners along that strip are pumped for the future. This is what it takes to build a global city. First pain, then opportunity. And that is what Parramatta must now become, Australia's next great global city. The building blocks are all there. The metros, the light rail, WestConnex, a new pool complex, commercial hubs, a strong public sector presence, a world-class university, and more to come. It's all coming together. And the Parramatta we know today is unrecognisable from where it was just a decade ago, let alone the Parramatta of my youth. That's only possible because we've taken on the challenges that previous governments put off for too long. Without those efforts, the opportunities would not be there. But now it's time for the next step. And today I can announce that I've asked Barney Glover, the Vice-Chancellor of Western Sydney University, to conduct a review for our government into how we can make Parramatta a global city. Barney is one of the West's most passionate advocates. He lives it, he breathes it, and as the leader of Western Sydney University, importantly, he has skin in the game. I can't wait to see what he comes up with and look forward to coming back and sharing it with you. So to conclude, I want to thank you again for having me here today. And I wish you all the best over the course of the day for this fantastic summit. I said when I became Premier that the heart of our government would be in Western Sydney. Well, right now, that heart is racing because the future here is nothing but exciting. We are building the big projects. We are creating the new industries. We are delivering the skills for the job boom that is coming. Building local facilities to make life better. We are putting Western Sydney on the map as a cultural capital in its own right. This is all about enabling people to work, to play, and to have access to the best services close to home in a place they love to live. We want boom times in Boomtown, and I'm going to work with all of you to make that happen. Thanks very much.
G'day everybody. Premier, welcome back to Parramatta. The city of Parramatta engulfs Sydney Olympic Park. You're actually the mayor here, but just outside here, we're waiting to see who'll be the next Lord Mayor of Parramatta. And good luck to Barney, well chosen. He's a great fella. Brent, before I invite Michael Miller from Hitachi up to a vote of thanks, a couple of things I just wanted to maybe, you're in the mood to chat, so we can ask. I've stood on these stages with my friend and your friend Gladys Berejiklian for a few years and tried to talk to her about beyond the incredible boom, the success of Western Sydney, there's still some who aren't sharing in the boom, and they're the ones living in, or wanting to live in social housing, ones who can't. Fair to say I didn't move it greatly enough in my world. Do you, new government under your leadership, do we expect much difference in the role of how you can help? So these guys, all the money they've got in the room, they want to help social housing as well. How can maybe you think that what we can do is housing affordability in the West, in this boomtown, so that everybody can share in the boom?
Yeah. Look, that's a great question, Chris. And what I can say is social and affordable housing will be a key focus of mine. And I've seen the success of that firsthand during this pandemic in terms of a lot of the stimulus projects we put into place. I said as Treasurer that we'd put the economy before the budget to get us through. And so we wanted to stimulate and get people into work quickly. I'll give you a story. So in the budget last year, we put a substantial investment into improving social housing, not just in construction, but also in renovations. And early on, I went out to a site in Arncliffe and met some workers there who there was this desolate area of old social housing that was not fit for anyone to live in. And I met some young workers there who were previously unemployed, who were now working on those projects in the middle of the pandemic. It was only a few months later, I came back and to see the finished product, and met a man who'd been sleeping rough for 10 years, who now, for the first time, had access to housing and the wraparound services off the back of it. That's what success looks like. Stimulating the economy, getting people in work, and helping people get into housing. And just seeing that happen in a very short space of time it's one of the great aspects of being in politics and public life, where you make decisions, you actually see the change very, very quickly. So in the last budget, we invested more. I want to continue to look at innovative ways of doing that, of getting private capital and investment to provide great public outcomes. We will be announcing a housing strategy next year, and I can guarantee you the aspect of social and affordable housing will be a crucial part of that strategy, and the West will be heart of it.
Fantastic. That's great news, Premier. On the subject of both Good Heart for Western Sydney, the West Invest Fund, you've put up the $5 million to effectively socially and economically transform the region. I know at the heart of that is this concept of the beauty, the amenity you're speaking about as well. Again, you also said you're a proud son of the Central City, fantastic, and ditto, the sometimes forgotten city in the middle. There's a whole bunch of the old town centres from what the Central City effectively is, the old post-World War II suburban sprawl with all of its cities. The shining ones like Parramatta, but there's also the Marylands and the Lakembas and even the Macquarie Parks that need to go from business park to actual living centre. Again, there's a whole bunch of money in this room. How can we make your $5 billion, $10 billion? How can you think about partnerships with federal government, local government, and particularly the private sector? And in town centres, things like the shopping mall operator and the Leagues Club, they're major players in those town centres. Can you think of a way, or continue to think of a way that we can also contribute to that?
Well, Chris, by giving us your ideas. One of our great, I think New South Wales, particularly over the last 18 months, has been incredibly successful in driving our economy through this. And the key for me in that success has been the ideas that haven't necessarily come from government, that have come from outside government. The West Invest Fund came about because of our West Connects transaction. But the idea of putting it together and its focus on livability came from all the mayors. It was very clear when I met with all the mayors during that period of time, as I said in my speech, it's very clear to me what was needed. It was the smaller projects, the open space, the green space, the high streets, the pools. That is where the government needed to shift from the big to the small. And great communities, great local amenity provides for great culture and livability off the back of it. That's what beauty creates. So, Chris, the short answer to the question is, we've got an open door here. Give us your ideas. We want to partner with local government. We want to partner with the federal government. We've got a great public service here in New South Wales that drive those ideas up. But I need ideas coming in. And during the pandemic, when we were tailoring our business and financial support, a lot of those ideas didn't come from me. They didn't come from the public service. They came from you. And being on the phone every day and making the calls and hearing what people had to say about how the pandemic was affecting their business and their industry helped tailor those policy responses. So when it comes to the $5 billion West Invest Fund, same principle applies. If you've got ideas, we want to make this work. Just pick up the phone and give us your best.
Fantastic. Well, there's the invitation for you, ladies and gentlemen. We've got all day to come up with some ideas. Promise we'll take them back tomorrow to the Premier. Before we let you go, this is an infrastructure and property summit particularly. So the small projects you're focusing on are fantastic. Some of the legacy of the bigger projects, I'll be launching a paper after you've gone about social legacy of how we can capture more of that and put it back into training and Indigenous enterprise and all sorts of things to try and fix our community at the same time. There's a few projects I think you inherited. I think your predecessor had a faster rail report lobbed at her desk about 2 years ago. And if your six city plan with Parramatta in the middle, one would suggest maybe a faster rail through Parramatta Olympic Park becomes more obvious. The floods have reminded us, Castlereagh connections, your old electorate up in, your last electorate up in Hawkesbury, yeah, a few. The floodplain and the Castlereagh connection, hopefully with the feds kicking in. I know the Mayor of Canterbury Bankstown's keen on a particular hospital site. There's a range of projects that you've got. Do you see the momentum going? I know you said you're spending our way out of trouble, which is great. You're not treasurer anymore, so it's not your problem now. You're left with Matt Keane to worry about the red ink. Do you see the momentum is still coming, and are you comfortable the way public and private sectors working to deliver those projects that we need in our big city?
Yeah, I am, Chris. I mean, we can't stop. When I say we're shifting the focus from the big to the small, that doesn't mean we're not continuing with the big. We've got to build, and continue to construct 6 great cities. You said I've moved the 3 cities to the 6 cities. A key part of that is transport connection, and that's just from our ports to our airports. This is the great transformation for our state from north, south, east, west. That's the vision of where we're taking our city going forward. And what's crucial as part of that are those major infrastructure projects, and they're not going to stop. And and that's not just in terms of setting up those cities for success and the suburbs off the back of it. Crucially, the jobs, the amount of times I've gone out to projects, either as treasurer and now as premier, and met young workers on these projects who they might be on the M4, but previously they were on a metro. These projects provide opportunity and prosperity for people across our state. So we're going to continue to do that. And continue to partner with the private sector to deliver that bright future for our state. So please don't think when I'm talking about smaller projects, we're neglecting the big ones. The big projects are the ones that have transformed Parramatta into what it is today and will continue to do so. And that has a benefit of the amenity of the suburbs that are outside those cities. So the big project, that pipeline, we've got $108 billion of infrastructure investment over the next 4 years, and that is only going to get better and bigger as we move forward.
In the interest of time, you've got to get to Penrith and make the Penny Panthers very happy and give them a stadium. Congratulations on that. So, roof would be kind of handy on Accor Stadium too, just let you know while I got you. And Lindy Dietz would like one at Campbelltown. I know Eddie Jackson wants one at Liverpool. So
what about Leichhardt?
Leichhardt. Darcy Byrne definitely wants one at Leichhardt. I think you've already devastated him though. Just because I've called Michael up, let Mike go. So I might jump through I've spoken to the Premier already about our collaborative leadership program, but to thank you, we're doing our bit. You're building the hardware, we're going to build the software. We're investing in a leadership program over 3 years to bring public and private sector together. You just scroll the stuff for me back. I'm going to Michael, and we'll talk about that a bit later in the day. But it's fantastic to have a lot of our people with us today who are on that program, the future of Western Sydney, and to thank you also for your support in your last gig. For our next gig, which is the Ignite Summit, all about advanced manufacturing, science, enterprise, education in Western Sydney, the Treasury. If we've got somebody out of Treasury, people, it's actually possible. It's fantastic that we reversed it for once. It's great. And to talk about the way we can help you meet the ambitions you've had. So, but you did mention big projects. There's one of the guys here who wants to be heavily involved in one of those big projects. There's a few people in the room. But please welcome Michael Miller, the CEO of Hitachi Australia. Provide a vote of thanks.
Morning. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present, and also acknowledge other Indigenous leaders in the room today and pay my respects to each of you. Hitachi is a $100 billion global powerhouse. We made some decisions back in 2018 to continue to drive into our local market, the Australian communities, economic, social and environmental value. They're the things that are important to our organisation, and we signed the Memorandum of Understanding with respect to investment in Western Sydney because we didn't see any better place in Australia to be able to bring our global capability to local market. We're looking forward to the continuation of that journey with the New South Wales Government, with the Western Parkland City Authority, and with all of our partners in the room to be able to realise the vision that has been laid out for us by this government. Because it's very clear that there is no shortage of vision, but it is now about public and private sector working together with the universities and research sector to enable that vision to execute. And that's what we're about in Boomtown, and I would encourage everybody to really work together and challenge that, because that's the most critical thing we can do to be able to support the development of this great city. Now, to the job at hand, I would firstly like to congratulate the Premier on the new job. In 2011, when this government was brought to power, I don't think we could have expected to see the level of leadership that we've seen from a succession of premiers. But what most particularly impresses me about the 2-month start with the new Premier is that it could have been easy to take the path most walked, given the strength of some of his predecessor leaders. But already in a really short period of time, Premier, through both the Bradfield oration last week, through your comments yesterday at the National Press Club, that we're not taking the easy path, or the Premier's not taking the easy path, it's about taking his own path. And certainly some of the observations that have been made over the last week and a half, and in fact 8 weeks, give us strong views about the direction that we're now taking with the existing government under your leadership. And we congratulate you for that. It might have been easy to follow other strong leaders. That pathway was being well worn. I think what we've got now is a very clear direction from the current Premier that families and communities are at the core of the things that we need to be able to build inside Sydney. And Western Sydney is clearly at the heart of that. It's the powerhouse of rugby league in New South Wales and the world. And now we have, and no disrespect intended, Premier, but the most important job in the country held by a Penrith boy in our Australian cricket captain. That's right. So again, thank you, Premier. We look forward to working with you, as does the entirety of the room, and we will make the 3 cities strategy work, particularly with the drive in Western Sydney. So thanks very much.